Welcome back, guys. In this video, we'll be taking a look at the four quadrants. So what do we mean by the four quadrants? In trigonometry, when we divide our angles ranging from 0 to 360 into four different places, we call them the quadrants. So this is the first quadrant, second quadrant, third quadrant, and fourth quadrant. That means 360 divided by 4. So from here to here is 90 degrees. From here to here is 180 degrees. From here to here is 270 degrees. Then here to here you have your 360 degrees. And when you go through another turn, it will be from 360 to 720, which behaves exactly the same way as 0 to 360. Now you ask yourself, what is the essence of learning this when I can actually punch figures on my calculator? So you learn this in case you are given questions in which you are not allowed to make use of your calculator. You need to know when your sign is negative, when your sign is positive, when your cos is negative, when your cos is positive, and lastly, when your tan, where your tan is negative and where your tan is positive. You can also learn that using the various graph, which we will look at as your sine graph, your cosine graph, and your tangent and your tan graph. Now, remember we talked about special angles like 30 degrees, 60 degrees, and 45 degrees. You also have special angles in the second quadrant, third quadrant, and fourth quadrant. But you need to know how to refer your angles from your second quadrant to your first quadrant. For example, your 30 degrees behaves exactly the same way as your 150 degrees. Just that the sign will either remain the same or it will change. Now, let's start with the first quadrant. First quadrant. Now, when we are talking about angles from 0 to 360 degrees, we start from positive x-axis. So any angle from 0 to 90, we start from here down to 90. So let's assume that we're talking about an angle theta, which can be 40, 45, 30, 60, as the case may be. So if we're talking about this angle theta, then we can bring out a relationship for sine, cos, and tan. From here, you will agree with me that my sine theta is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. That is positive x over arrow. Arrow is always a positive value. Arrow here is always a positive value. These arrows are always positive value. So you can see plus over arrow. It means that my sine theta is positive in the first quadrant. Similarly, cos theta will be equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. Okay, my sine theta is opposite. Opposite is y. Sorry, so that's an error on my part. Y over arrow. So sine theta is positive. Cos theta is adjacent over hypotenuse. That's positive x over arrow. That's also a positive value. And lastly, my tan theta is opposite over adjacent. That is positive y over positive x. That will also give us a positive value. So I can say in my first quadrant, my sine is positive, my cos is positive, and my tan is positive. And my theta in my first quadrant is simply equal to theta 1. So if I'm dealing with 20 degrees, 20 degrees is 20 degrees in the first quadrant. Now let's move on to the second quadrant. So this is the second quadrant here. Look at it here, my second quadrant. So any angle that I'll be looking at, we start from positive x down to this particular point. Positive x, this way you have your positive x, down to this particular point. So this is the theta 2. However, you need to create a relationship for sine, cos, and tan to show if it's positive or if it's negative. So we have to work with this theta here. So from here, you can see that my sine theta in this case is opposite over hypotenuse. Opposite in this case is see positive y. You can see it here, positive y. Positive y over arrow. Then you have your cos theta. Cos theta adjacent over hypotenuse is negative x over arrow. So you have negative x over arrow. And lastly, tan theta opposite over adjacent, positive y over negative x. Positive y over negative x. So here we can see that our sine is positive, our cos is negative, and our tan is negative. Positive over negative is negative. Your negative over positive is negative. So I can write here in my second quadrant, my sine is positive, my cos is negative, and also my tan is negative. And similarly, relationship between theta and theta 2. From here down to this point is 180. From here down to this point is 180. Then from here to here is theta 2. So therefore, this theta here, this theta you can see here is simply equal to what? 180 minus theta 2. So I can put that here. Theta is equal to 180 minus theta 2. So that means that, for example, if you ask to find the value of, let's say, sin 150, sin 150 is in the second quadrant. Remember, we are not making use of our calculator. We have to refer that to our first quadrant. So in my first quadrant, this will simply be sin 180 minus 150. 180 minus 150 is 30. So sin 150 is the same thing as sin 30. Then you ask yourself, in the second quadrant, is sin positive or negative? Sin is positive. So sin 150 is positive sin 30. However, if I ask you to look for cos 150, cos 150 will also be cos 30. But you ask yourself, cos, is it positive or negative in the second quadrant? Cos is negative in the second quadrant. So cos 150 will be equal to negative cos 30. And we all know that cos 30 is root 3 over 2. So the answer should be negative root 3 over 2. Now let's move on to the third quadrant. For a third quadrant, starting from the positive x-axis down to here, you have what we call theta 3. Then from here to here is the theta we are considering, because we always form the angle with the x-axis. Now, what will be our sin theta in this case? Okay, let's put it here. My sin theta will be equal to opposite, negative y in this case. Opposite is negative y over hypotenuse, negative y over arrow. Cos theta is adjacent. My adjacent is negative x over arrow. Lastly, we have our tan theta. Tan theta is opposite, which is negative y, over adjacent, which is negative x. Negative y over negative x. So from here, you can see that sine is negative, cos is negative, and tan is positive. That's negative over negative. So I can write here, third quadrant, sine is negative, cos is negative, and tan is positive. Now, similarly, from here to here is theta 3. However, from here to here is 180. So what will be this angle here? This angle here is simply theta 3 minus 180. Theta 3 minus 180. So we can say our angle for theta is theta 3 minus 180. Now I have a question. Look for sine 240 degrees. Now, first of all, we ask ourselves, what quadrant is this? Third quadrant. So I have to refer this back to the first quadrant. That is 240 minus 180. 240 minus 180 is 60. So everything here should be sine 60. Now, the next question you ask yourself, sine in the third quadrant, is it positive or negative? Sine is negative in the third quadrant. So sine 240 should be negative sine 60. And sine 60 is root 3 over 2. So negative sine 60 should be minus root 3 over 2. So sine 240 is minus root 3 over 2. Then lastly, the fourth quadrant, that is this quadrant. My theta started from here down to this point as my theta 4. Then here is our theta, in which we used to check if sine, cos, or tan are positive or negative. Starting with sine, sine theta is equal to negative y over arrow. Cos theta is equal to cos theta adjacent, where do I have my adjacent? Positive x over arrow. And lastly, tan theta, negative y over positive x. So my sine is negative, my cos is positive, and my tan is negative. So we can put them here. Sine is negative, cos is positive, and tan is negative in the fourth quadrant. Sine negative, cos positive, and tan is negative. Now, similarly, okay, I forgot to add that here. From here to here is theta 4. Then from here back to this particular point is 360. So this full guy here is 360 degrees. However, from here to here is theta 4. So I can see that my theta is equal to 360 minus what? Theta 4. Theta 4 plus theta will give me 360. So theta is 360 minus theta 4. So we can add that here. Theta is equal to 360 minus theta 4. Now, how do you approach questions in the fourth quadrant? Let's say we are given tan 300 degrees. So for ask ourselves fourth quadrant. So in your fourth quadrant, our theta will be equal to tan 360 minus 300. Tan 360 minus 300 is same thing as tan 60. Next thing you ask yourself, in the fourth quadrant, is tan positive or negative? Tan is negative. So tan 300 degrees is same thing as negative tan 60. And tan 60 is root 3. So the answer here should be negative root 3. So this is how you approach questions in the fourth quadrant. First of all, you have to know if they are positive or negative. Then you have to know how to refer them back to the first quadrant in cases where you are not making use of the calculator. However, if you are making use of the calculator, if you are being asked to look for tan 300, you just punch it on your calculator as tan 300. Then there are also cases whereby you'll be asked tan 300 is equivalent to what? See something like a negative tan 60, a positive tan 60, as the case may be. So this is the approach that will make you understand how to tackle questions in that form. So that's all we'll be looking at about the four quadrants. In our subsequent videos, we'll be looking at our sine graph, our cosine graph, and our tan graph. That will help us answer questions that are less than zero, that is angles that are less than zero and angles that are greater than 360. Then we'll see how to bring out some properties concerning sine, cos, and tan. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, kindly use the like button, and if you are yet to subscribe, please do well to subscribe. See you guys in my next video.